Alrighty, your cat is in. Today we take a look at They Made Dauntless a Hellscape, Then Fired the Devs by Bellular News. Take a look at this. I meant to play this game before, and then I saw it's a dumpster fire. Like, what is going on?
You are about to witness the rise and the massive and insane fall of a studio. This whole thing is wild. Now, I'll start with a question. Do you know the feeling whenever you're playing a game, it wipes all your progress, and then it asks you to pay for stuff that you already had? I actually don't, because that's not normal. But it is what basically happened to the players of Dauntless. Dauntless being a game made by Phoenix Labs. So imagine pouring hundreds of hours into a game only to basically have that erased overnight. What went down was not a misstep, it was a full-on betrayal that left that game's community reeling.
Yep.
But it did not happen for the traditional super corporate reasons. The story behind it is absolutely wild.
Let's find out.
I think that this all started with a $150 million acquisition, but where it would end is
Wait, it wasn't Garena who bought him? What happened?
crazy, because as it turns out, selling your soul to the crypto bros wasn't really the shortcut to success that some people thought it was. This whole thing's wild, so let's do the story. Back in 2014, a bunch of Riot Games staff basically decided they'd had enough of things at the big leagues and they fancied a crack at going indie, but going indie with a big scale. So they founded Phoenix Labs and they had a simple philosophy, which was small teams, big games. And this is something that should have worked because these were experienced developers and they were well-connected people. Now this led to a game called Dauntless, which was a free-to-play Monster Hunter-like game. And if you think about it, especially at the time, this was a damn smart move.
You know what? I've never played it before, and now I probably will never play it. This is awful.
One, there was no free-to-play offering quite like that at the time, and they probably counted on their Western UX sensibilities, helping that appeal to a broader audience who liked the idea of Monster Hunter, but just found Monster Hunter too arcane to get into. And that might sound like a crazy thing to say today, especially given there's a new Monster Hunter on the horizon, but you've got to remember that Monster Hunter World came out in 2018, and at the time of 2014, most people knew Monster Hunter from handheld games. And you know what? This plan actually worked. When Dauntless hit its open beta in May 2018, it didn't just do well, it properly exploded, so much so that by July, they had racked up 2 million players. Now remember, these are ex-Rioters, and it took Riot quite a lot of time to put the S in Riot Games. Phoenix didn't want to do that, so in 2018, Phoenix made two big moves. First up, Dauntless launched as an Epic Games Store exclusive. Now, this was a risky thing in some ways. It was certainly limiting, but they were still posting humongous, big player numbers.
I didn't even know that.
And they got a big bag of cash from Epic. That could not have hurt. They then acquired Bot School Inc., which is basically a studio, and they would help with a cross-platform release. And for most people, that's really as far as the Phoenix Labs story goes, right? Like, you've probably seen Dauntless. They hit 30 million players by 2022, but haven't really heard that much else. You'd think it's mission accomplished, but no. Lots of things would begin to go very badly indeed. What I just covered is what the gaming audience broadly knew, but I left out a small little detail. The 2020 investment of $150 million from Garena. Garena are a fun bunch, and they're a subsidiary of C Group. We'll get into them soon. And this is a little bit of a turning point for Phoenix Labs. You see, like many, Phoenix Labs was venture-backed at the start, and for the VCs, this was absolutely great, like a big investment came in. As for Phoenix, though, this should have been a good thing as well. Garena basically saw Phoenix Labs as their ticket to the big leagues of PC and console gaming, and Phoenix Labs probably saw loads of dollar signs. They already had a big successful game, and this was their chance to expand their reach into South America and Southeast Asia. And it must have helped that C Group were, in fact, the regional publisher of League of Legends in that
And I mean, maybe you just have them as a regional publisher. You don't really need them for anything else, right? I mean, if you have dozens of millions of players, what's 150 million? I mean, I don't know.
Base, so there was obviously contacts. But as it would turn out, regular corporate cynicism would actually have you underestimate just how badly things were going to end up going. But things would not collapse instantly, so here's how it went down. Now, Garena's bread and butter, of course, is mobile gaming, and they wanted Phoenix to be their sort of go-to core game developer moving into PC and console. The problem there is there's an obvious clash, right? Garena is mobile. In experience, yes, but also in terms of mindset, lessons learned, all of those things. And I think this was bound to cause friction.
I mean, I wouldn't say they are mobile in terms of mindset. I don't know. I mean, Summoners War Sky Arena kind of gave us the blueprint for successful mobile gaming, right? Like, do they sell anything anywhere outside of Southeast Asia? Like, nothing against them, I just haven't really heard of it.
But it's fair to say that Phoenix certainly did not help matters. By now, Phoenix had 10 games in development, and that might sound kind of insane. One company, 10 games simultaneously, but I'll assume that they knew not all would be winners and that this was actually their strategy. They said, small teams, big games, so it must have been all to fit that mantra. And there are broadly two ways to read this. I imagine it's a bit of both. One way to read it is, they get investment, the investor has high expectations, maybe too high, and they're unsustainable. Another is simply that Phoenix Labs' leadership had just received a shitload of money. They had a winning game in the form of Dauntless, and they got a little bit too big for their boots, too ambitious.
Yeah. I haven't played the game, right? I always had it on the radar, kind of. I was like, I'm not gonna get into that just yet. Just like, you know, I don't know about this genre, whatever. I'm not like into learning boss encounters. It's like, it was cool for Dark Souls 1, yeah, but I played Phantasy Star Online before for thousands of hours, and that was kind of the same thing without the dodge roll, so you really had to learn your boss encounters, and yeah, I think I've done that already. Like, why do I need another game that's kind of like Dark Souls-y with like more dodge rolls? I don't like dodge rolls anyway, right? I mean, they aren't bad to have, yeah, but they are crutch, and anyway, rather play something else at this point.
What we know is...
So what's the point? Like, just because you get 150 million doesn't mean you suddenly can expand your audience. You don't just get 150 million and figure out the hard work of building a game that appeals to both the core audience and people beyond that. You don't just like do that so easily.
We fast forward to early 2020.
They should have just built on what they had, like Path of Exile has been doing, right?
23, just after the 30 million player milestone for Dauntless, things would start to look a little bit dicey. The problem with that investment is that Garena themselves had a year of lower returns that we do not believe were the fault of Phoenix Labs. They were doing other things, all those mobile things. So because Garena had lower returns, they decided to shift their focus back to mobile and back to regional licensed titles. And that meant spinning off, getting rid of Phoenix Labs. That means it's less that Phoenix Labs failed and more that they no longer fitted the new strategy. Now this is where the comeback story could have began.
Yep.
This is where things...
That's what I was thinking. What went wrong? It sounds like, okay, they're out of this failing mobile business. Like, okay, I mean, I wish them the best at Garena, but yeah, I don't know. Gotta go with the times.
Really could have turned bright. A new era, more oriented towards their mission, where somehow they find money that believes in them. And that is how Phoenix Labs framed it when they talked about what happened next. They revealed that they were going private, with investors backing management. This seemed really good, but there
who are these investors? So they got bought out, basically. And now they're the pet project of some family or dudes or whatever. Okay.
was something a bit curious. Nobody really knew who those investors were.
Yeah.
It was very much kept hush.
That's very important.
And it's now that we reach the point in this video where the bad news gets worse and the rate of decline will only hasten. Layoffs, dead projects, and crypto. Things really did take a public and rapid turn. Here's the report from Game Developer, and this revealed that Phoenix Labs' new backers were in fact Forte, a blockchain company that raised $725 million in 2021. But what's a little more curious is who the money was raised from. C Capital. The same people I talked about earlier. C Capital are a Singaporean tech conglomerate. They own Garnera, or the previous bunch who owned Phoenix. And
it's Garnera.
Phoenix Labs had went from
one subsidiary
to another company that the subsidiary's parent had heavily invested in. And of course, C also published League of Legends in Southeast Asia, which certainly makes you think, Who knew who? How did all of this happen? And the troubling thing here is how weird things are about to get, but how little nuance we have on the actual deal. And how little public reporting there has been.
And I'm just waiting for a blockchain game that, respects the players. Like just a normal game, but the players get to basically sell their items through the blockchain. That's it. No value add for the company, no nothing. Just the value add for the players. Yep. Then you can do it. And it's gonna be a value add for the players. No questions asked. But so far, all the crypto devs have been having those dollar signs in their eyes. Brother man, that's not okay. You gotta pass on all the benefits from the crypto, from the blockchain to the user. Or you will never establish this stuff. Yeah, later, 10 years later, there you can change things up and make bank, and you could call it a rug pull almost, but it's not technically that. But anyway, if you want to establish this stuff, well, you gotta first show the winning formula, which is purely adding the value add to the user, to the player. And then, yeah, over time, at some point, we'll find the middle ground where company and player know what they're getting, and it works better than before on the whole.
But what we do appear to be quite sure about is just how much they wanted to keep this under wraps. Back at Phoenix Labs, new hires were allegedly left in the dark as to their new owner until after they signed paperwork, and existing staff were allegedly told to keep quiet. Now, we did get a PR response after Game Developer broke the story, but it's one of those PR responses that is so weak that it basically tells us what's up.
When you tell the people who owns the company now, they probably understand that it's not going to be good for the popularity of the game. If more people knew that. So even if people don't sign anything, as long as you communicate that this is not going to be good PR, people are going to understand.
I'll quote it directly. The acquisition was not announced, but I don't think there was a formal policy around disclosure. That absolutely does sound suspicious. And to make it even more suspicious...
I mean, I'm trying to defend the company a bit here, because it's really just like, this company has a bad plan for what they want to do, in hindsight, and it failed. But it doesn't mean that the way this went down is because the company didn't want people to disclose that it bought these people out. This was a bad plan.
Well, co-founders of Phoenix Labs had been leaving since early 2023, and along with this deal, the CEO and CFO of Phoenix Labs would step down, with the CEO staying on as an advisor. And certainly, there are raised eyebrows here, even thinking about the LOL connections, what sorts of deals were made, and just why these things were so secret. Now with the current...
Yeah, I mean, it could just be they're looking for their off-ramp at some point, if it's gonna be a struggle to get the product that the players need to keep playing the game. The company just has a different approach, again, maximizing the returns for the company through the crypto stuff as opposed to maximizing the returns to the player.
The CEO standing down and moving to an advisory role, they needed a new one. And a new one was parachuted in from a blockchain subsidiary that was owned by Forte, the people who just acquired Phoenix. This is already bloody strange.
It's not good when you keep swapping leadership out from the people who want to build a good game for people who want to do crypto money-making stuff. That in principle is just not a good idea. Phoenix Labs Studio, you don't give up your leadership if you want to maintain to be the same studio. Plain and simple. You had good leadership, then you give up your leadership for a wild card at best. See, that's a problem.
But it actually only accelerates from here. December 2023 saw 34 layoffs, and by this stage, things were truly dire. And the last remaining hope for the company was something called Project Dragon. Now, Forte saw blockchain potential in Project Dragon, so they really pushed that project. And they basically said, look, if you guys get funding for this, we're going to back you. Which, yes, does mean Forte were actually not willing to fund the development of that game. Staff were told to find funding within 3 months. But, of course, by the time this is all going down, game funding had, to say the very least, shrank humongously. Dragon, of course, would not find a publisher, and that led to May 2024's big Zoom call. On this Zoom call, 150 staff were laid off and 3 projects were axed. Now, Project Dragon was the last big hope, and the wild thing is, Dragon died weeks from a planned early access release. Weeks. That left them with only two things. Another game they had developed called Fae Farm that basically doesn't appear to have really made much of a dent, and of course, Dauntless. By this stage, Phoenix Labs had been gutted. It was a shell of its former self. And to steer them forward, they did in fact not have a CEO. Now on paper they did, right? The CEO that Forte moved in from one of their subsidiaries. But it wasn't there. Not because he quit, rather because he reportedly vanished. Just vanished in 2024. And so what happened is this. The servers for Dragon were shut down, cutting off staff access. And what would then happen after that is one of those things where, necessity can be the mother of invention. But the launch of Dauntless onto Steam involved inventions that would backfire. They invented the wrong things entirely. By now, we're approaching the end of 2024. Phoenix had one win in its history, Dauntless. Dauntless was still fairly big, but for all of this time, it had lived on the Epic Games Store. That exclusivity ended, and that gave Phoenix Labs their last chance, a Steam release of Dauntless on December 5th, 2024.
Isn't that like 6 years later? What in the world?
Get that right, and maybe they could turn things around, and they could save what was left of the company. But to whet your appetite, it has a 17% user score right now. And that's because Phoenix really did go for the mother of all Hail Marys. A complete business model overhaul and accompanying changes that essentially wiped player progress. Weapons, gear, player levels. Stuff that people had grinded out no longer mattered. Now, this update was apparently so grand that players would need to relearn the game, and that's why it was effectively a reset. But of course, those who tried rapidly learned that, the monetization was much worse. Weapons and cosmetics that people used to unlock through gameplay were now locked behind premium currency, behind loot boxes, and battle pass paywalls. So was this a blatant and shameless cash grab? I think the answer is absolutely goddamn yes.
If it was a cash grab, they would have just let the old players keep their stuff, actually. They would have just let the people keep their stuff. Because this is moronic beyond belief. Like, Path of Exile released a whole new game, Path of Exile 2. And you can keep your cosmetics from Path of Exile 1. What? And it's important to make a good first impression anyway, so maybe they should have held off with this somehow, I don't know. Because you're on Steam, right? Like, I saw all the games on Steam, now I can play it. Pog. Yeah, I do have Epic installed, but I just use it to get free games that mostly suck anyway, but so I would never think about looking for Dauntless on the Epic launcher, right? So.
But we can also understand why. Just look how screwed this.
I don't think I knew it was free to play on Epic all those years. I don't think I knew that.
Team had been over the former 2 years. And to communicate to you just how bad and just how much of a betrayal these changes really felt, here's a quote from Jessie Lee Gagnon, who really did not mince her words. She's a former developer on this game. Quote, "Dauntless today is no longer free to slay. They've gutted the core gameplay and crafting mechanics. The essence of the Slayers has been, in fact, slayed to ribbons." That is absolutely damning. Now, it would not be long until the damage control. Mid-December saw them issue a public apology promising to make things right and to compensate players.
Going on Steam and being like, well, cosmetics are for pay now, deal with it. I think people would have been like, yeah, this sucks, but hey, we can keep our old cosmetics and we get all these new players from Steam. Wow, and they can buy the cosmetics. That would have been a cash grab in a way, but people would have gotten over it. This, on the other hand, is just like, what?
But the thing is, in order to make things right, they'd actually need developers. But unfortunately, that is one of the many things that, by now, Phoenix Labs no longer has.
Oh.
As January 2025 drew to a close, we got the nail in the coffin. Reports that the, quote, majority of the studio had been laid off. And as it stands, Fae Farm, their other game that just doesn't... it wasn't awful, but it didn't really move the needle. It is content complete. It had been since July 2024. doubt it'll be a major source of revenue, and Dauntless is still there, it's still running, it's still on Steam, you can download it, you can play it. The 17% score that I laid out used to be much worse. The few changes that they were able to make have pulled recent reviews to 34%, but as it stands, there doesn't...
144 user reviews in 30 days. Yeah, they're not pulling in the eyeballs, that's for sure. And why would I play a game that has no developers, right? Like, I'm not gonna play a dead game, right? Like, this is a live service game without developers. It's like, I feel like I play a dead game already when I play Genshin and sometimes Honkai Star Rail. Like, maintenance mode or what, and sometimes get a story patch. Anyway, hope they fix that sometime. But so, I could just play and learn this game and be like, okay, that means feature complete or what? But it's just gone, it's just dead. I mean, I played Spiral Knights back in the day, and that game was feature complete and like dead on release somehow. Like, for some reason the devs just didn't keep adding content, and then they had one content expansion, and it was like quite a... I think the story you had to buy in a free-to-play game for the expansion. It's just like, what are you doing, guys? You've got to have the devs on board, or people are gonna be like, oh, why don't I just play some classic Nintendo DS game or whatever. I mean, I guess Ashen Odyssey right there. That's a good game. That'll be some Ashen Odyssey.
Appear to be any bloody developers who can work in the game. That isn't to say that the game is dead and gone. Dauntless is still a running...
And that's the thing. Single player game is balanced for wonder and excitement and messing around with stuff that would be broken in any sort of not even competitive, but live environment, like live update environment, right? You can have like a broken weapon in some Final Fantasy chest that totally doesn't make sense, and you totally don't know about it unless you go look for it. But it makes sense in a single player game, right? Just juice up your experience. Well, you gotta buy that in a live service game. So why would I play a live service game that's dead when I can just play a single player game? It makes no sense.
Game with players, there's probably an email list with millions of people on it and all of those Steam users. So it is possible the Dauntless could be sold off to another company, it could be turned around, but we have to be realistic, and being realistic, that's probably it. And so it's...
Hey, if they find somebody who wants to buy the game and they have developers, it could be good. But yeah, probably it.
Weird when you wrap the story up. Phoenix Labs implies, a winged beast and some sort of rebirth miracle. In reality, no, it's Icarus Labs. Just replace the sun with, like, bags of crypto money. But the weird thing is we don't really know exactly who to blame here, because it's so weird. That's where things are odd, because up to the Forte sale, things seem clear and rational. The idea that you get VC funding, that gets you started, then you get acquired. That's literally the business model, right?
A lot of things wrong with what happened. Being Epic exclusive for 6 years. Thinking 150 million gonna get your game out there, and you already have a player base, and they just want a good game. Losing your developers. Like, what is going on with that? If you look at it objectively, you have these 6 years on Epic, and nobody knows what Epic is besides Fortnite, right? I don't know what Epic is besides Fortnite. So the game is just like living over there in the ether, right? It's like, okay, and then they got the game and they move it to Steam 6 years later, right? And so that's just like, the game could be really good, but they just had no player base to really work with in a way, because it's Steam that they want to be on, and they weren't on Steam. Again, Path of Exile did many things right, which is they're on Steam, they develop the game, and they have reasons to do content resets, so they can actually pitch you on the new league thing every 3 months, right? It's good to be in the news cycle. So, and this game, I never heard of it really. It's like, oh, I didn't even know it's on Epic. I didn't even know. What? Like, how would I know? By the way, Epic Store is like not really user friendly. I scroll to my free game, and then they often, the free games mostly suck, right? And then the games they promote, like on the way scrolling down, they are very AAA whatever games I don't care about, or other games that are on the level of the free games, which are like, what is this? I don't know why I keep picking them up. Like, sometimes you get something nice like Loop Hero. I like that one. But yeah, many like third-rate games you get for free. And then sometimes there's some bigger stuff. I was thinking maybe gonna play that Tomb Raider reboot they handed out for free at one time, but you know, I like the original Tomb Raider stuff, right? But the reboot, I mean, not sure if I need to play that again. Also, I heard things like it's like worse than the original, so I don't know.
And the people who acquired them experienced a downturn in their core business. They made a strategic shift, and Phoenix was no longer super relevant to them, so Phoenix gets sold off. But then it's weird because Phoenix gets sold off to a company that Garnera's parent heavily invested in. There's a crypto company, Forte Labs. That's why we get a crypto angle in Project Dragon. That's all really weird.
It's been 6 years of not being on Steam, right? I mean, something must have gone terribly wrong on that front of things.
But where it's the most bizarre to me, where I smell that there's a story, but I can't call it, is how little we know about the key players that made all of this happen. We can speculate that the Phoenix Labs leadership saw the writing on the wall and basically said, fuck it, we'll sell to Forte, money me now, and immediately jumped because we saw co-founder, CEO, CFO leave. But the thing is, there's no solid evidence there, even though the secrecy around...
Probably a lot of things going wrong. Like, why are you stuck on Epic? Why are you stuck on Epic for 6 years? I wouldn't want to be the CEO of a game stuck on Epic. What's up with that?
Forte's identity.
And if you can get it back, just go make another game somewhere else. Like, why not?
Is a humongous red flag.
Well, make a game somewhere else and make it back right away. I mean, that's smart, isn't it?
But as it stands, that's it for Dauntless. That's it for Phoenix.
Yeah.
I would imagine. And this is just one of those stories. I mean, come on. Dauntless, big success, should have been more successful, and defeat was grasped from the jaws of that victory.
Actually, now that they're on Steam, maybe somebody's gonna come along and be like, hey, this is a great game. It has a nice aesthetics, nice gameplay ideas, and it's at a bargain price right now. We just need some developers, and if the code base is fine, we can work with that. And it's gonna be fine. They're gonna make like Dauntless 2. Start fresh, but build on what you got, and it's gonna be like this is a chance for somebody who wanna work with Dauntless a little, because again, it has to be on Steam, and hey, if the people who run it now wanna sell it, I mean, you can build a good game off of that, right? Maybe add some graphical advancements with the Unreal Engine 4 or 5 or whatever we're on now. I don't even know. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. I'll link the vid below. Do give him some love over at Bellular News. Do stay safe out there. Good health is number 1. People are awesome if you set them up to be. Delusional if you set them up to be delusional. Survival of the Fitness is about group survival, so of course, humanity is always gonna have to deal with being somewhat group focused, and so, you know, anyway. Minor dig at Asmongold being about survival of the fitness, but he doesn't know what it means really. Anyway. And get a hat for yourself. Oh yeah. Cheers, have a good one, and rate, comment, subscribe!